Guys, so today we're going to go over operations with complex numbers. So we've already seen that a complex number is just a real number plus or minus an imaginary number. One thing to keep in mind still when dealing with operations with complex numbers is that I squared equals -1. So one thing to remember from algebra is that you can only add and subtract like terms. So meaning if x squared is here, you can add it to another term that has x squared. When you're multiplying like bases, you add the exponents. So I'm going to clarify with the examples. So notice in number 1, you always look between the two parentheses. So I'm adding the two binomials, which means since I'm only adding, I can only add like terms. So meaning the real number with the real number. So I'm adding 3 plus 5, which will give me 8. And I'm going to add the imaginary number, which is -4 minus 6. So -4i minus 6i, since they're both imaginary, I keep the like term and I do whatever the coefficient tells me. So -4 minus 6. Make sure that you review the operations with positive and negative numbers that I went over in the earlier help videos. So if the signs match, you add, take the sign of the bigger number 6, and it's negative. So this imaginary number would be -10i. So that's how we add. From here, number 2, if you look between the two parentheses, you are subtracting. So same deal. You can only add and subtract like terms. So we're also going to be combining the real numbers together, but we're subtracting them. 1 minus 3. So signs don't match. I'm going to take a sidebar here. 1 minus 3. Signs do not match. This is a +1, -3. When the signs don't match, we subtract. 3 minus 1 is 2. And we always take the sign of the bigger number. Bigger number is 3, and it's negative. So is my number. Okay, for the imaginary number, there's I minus 2i. So if I take I minus 2i, remember if you don't see a number in front of a variable, there's technically a 1 there. So I keep the like term, which is the I, the imaginary number, and I combine 1 minus 2. So signs don't match. Again, that's a +1. I subtract 2 minus 1 is 1, and I take the sign of the bigger number. Bigger number is 2, it's negative. So this would be -1i, which you won't really see the 1 written in front of it, so you'll probably just see it as I. So for number 3, we are stepping it up a little bit. Notice that there is nothing between the two parentheses, which means they're being multiplied. So when you're multiplying like bases, you add the exponents. Now, how do we multiply two binomials, meaning there's two terms in each parentheses? You could distribute or you could FOIL. In this example, I'm going to show you FOIL, which some of you have already seen before, meaning first, outer, inner, last. So that's what FOIL stands for. First, outer, inner, last. So following the colors, I'm going to multiply the first term in each binomial, which gives me 4 times 2, and that'll be 8. Outer would be the two terms on the outside, so 4 minus 3i. So if I take 4 and -3i, 4 times -3, remember, when you're multiplying like bases, you add the exponents, but you don't need to have them be like terms in order to multiply them. So 4 times -3 would give me -12, bring down the I. So only when you're adding and subtracting do you have to add and subtract like terms. Color coordinating still, inner, the 2 on the inside would be 5i times 2. So 5i times 2. 5 times 2 would give me +10 and then bring down the I. And because last I'm out of room here, I'm going to put it up top. So 5i times -3i. I'm going to put that here. 5i times -3i. All right, so this one's a little different if I'm multiplying last. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Remember, I'm multiplying I times I as well, and when I multiply like bases, I add the exponents. Technically, if you don't see an exponent for a variable, it has an exponent of 1. So I times I is I squared. So if I bring down the negative 15, remember, I actually know what I squared is. Negative 15 is being multiplied to I squared. I squared is negative 1. So negative 15 times negative 1 gives me positive 15. So for my last term, that's going to say plus 15. When I'm done foiling, I have this whole adding and subtracting problem that I've done for number 1 and 2. So I'm going to add and subtract the real numbers. So I have 8 plus 15, and that would give me 23. And then I have negative 12i plus 10i. So I'm going to keep the imaginary number I and combine their coefficient, negative 12 plus 10. Signs don't match, subtract, take the sign of the bigger number. And that's pretty much it. So just remember, when you're foiling or multiplying complex numbers, when you multiply I times I, that's where we have to remember I squared equals negative 1. All right, guys, I hope this helped.